Tonight, guys, we're going to have a couple guests come on and we're going to answer one question about all 32 NFL teams tonight, so stay tuned.
Fantasy football, you dealing with the best. Keep it hype, authentic, this ain't nothing like the rest. With the Armchair Fantasy Show podcast, give advice for all the listeners to improve your stats. Yeah, we live on GoingFor2.com. Tuesdays and Fridays, this is what you want. Talking dynasties and daily drafts, and we just getting started, that ain't even the half. Yeah, so go ahead, tell your friends to join. Going for two, cause no one remembers the extra point. Hey, GoingFor2.com, the Armchair Fantasy Show.
What's going on, guys? All right, welcome to episode 98 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. We are live every Tuesday and Friday night right here on Facebook Live, Periscope, and YouTube, and of course syndicated on all your major podcast networks. And the return of the GoingFor2 app. I've been working on it all summer. I released it last night, so you can now stream the podcast in the GoingFor2 app for iOS and Android as well. I'm here as always with my co-host, Mr. Ryan Searfoss. Ryan, how you doing tonight, man?
Fantastic. Has some college football on, and by the way, I meant to bring up the app looks awesome now.
Thank you, man.
It looks. I clicked on it by accident. I clicked on it the other day, and I'm like, "Whoa, this changed."
Yeah, I've been working on it.
It looks real good.
Thank you.
Go find it online.
Yep, definitely for iOS and Android, guys. It's free for either one, and you get our podcast and all of our content from GoingFor2.com. All right, also joining us tonight, we have a returning guest. He was on my show back when it was still called the Press Coverage Podcast. A very long time ago, it was only audio. It was back when I used to put my phone on speaker when I recorded my guests and just recorded it through my mic. Mr. Courtney Harden, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm good, man. How you doing, man? Thanks for having me on.
Yep, definitely. Glad to get you back on the show, man. Appreciate it. And we have a returning guest, GoingFor2's own Mr. Justin. I always mess your last name up, man, so I'm just going to call you Skywalker. That's what your Twitter handle says, so you're Justin Skywalker to me.
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me back. I'm a little giddy, though, because Danny Dimes has been proving the doubters wrong, so I have to throw a little shameless plug in there.
Yeah, he definitely has. He's been looking good this preseason. He's been looking really good. So, yeah, good stuff there. I saw some stats today that no quarterback has done, for the preseason. He's doing it right now. I forget what the stats were, but it was a bunch of efficiency numbers that have been the most efficient quarterback in the preseason, even more efficient than Baker Mayfield was last year. So, Good stuff. Courtney, I'm going to go to you real quick because I want you to talk about your show. So you had a show on Blog Talk, that I've been on multiple times, but the Blog Talk show is no longer there, but you're relaunching it this weekend. So go ahead and tell everybody about your show that's relaunching this weekend, where we can find it at and what it's about.
Yeah, the relaunch is going to be this Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Excited on a new network, BS3 Radio. One of my good friends, Ben Sutters, he does this show on Spreaker.com this time, not Blog Talk anymore. Got tired of Blog Talk, so going to be on Spreaker right now. So, yeah, it's going to be, it's called at Get the Real Deal. Follow it on Twitter, at Get the Real Deal. Again, relaunching, excited. It's been too long. It's been over almost a year since I did a podcast. So glad to get it back. And, again, follow it at Get the Real Deal and listen to it on Spreaker.com.
Nice. Yeah, I know you've been off the air for that long, a year, huh? I've been bugging you all, for this whole year to get you back on the air. But it's glad to hear that you're back back on the air. So you definitely got to get me on the show. I know I usually do my seasonal appearance for fantasy football. It's probably too late in the game for that. But you can get me on at some point during the season and we can talk some fantasy football.
We'll talk this week because I might launch a couple shows just to get back into it. So we'll definitely talk this week. I might have you on right before Thursday if you're free. So
all right,
I'll let you know.
Good stuff. And Justin, what you got going on right now?
I actually did a couple of guest spots this week for fantasy football appearances. There's a old friend of mine who runs a podcast called Salzo Now in Harlem, and he wanted me to come on and talk about some fantasy football with him, so I was able to do that. That episode actually dropped today. And the Full Football Fanlist podcast I run with a buddy of mine named Matt, that's going on strong. We've been dropping episodes every week, so stay tuned and look out for that. Nice.
Good stuff. All right, guys, we're going to hit the news and notes here really quick. I don't have a whole lot to go over tonight, but let's go ahead and hit that real quick.
News and notes from around the league.
All right, so let's just start with any of the cuts that we had today. Was there anybody that stood out to you, Ryan, that got cut today that's fantasy worth?
Not really. I mean, Terrell Pryor, everybody kind of always keeps him in the back of their mind for some reason. I don't know why. But he just got caught again. But there's no one really fancy relevant who
I think Saturday
anyone should have had on their teams.
I think Saturday we might see some that get cut that might have been on the fringe of some dynasty rosters. But I think that today we didn't really see anybody get cut.
Did James Williams get cut again for a third time today?
I didn't realize he got signed again. Is it the same James Williams?
I think it is. I didn't realize it either, but I saw his name is like the third time he's been cut.
Yeah, he got cut from the Lions, but I didn't even realize he was signed again. So I guess the guy that we all loved in the offseason didn't stick with the NFL, I guess.
No, I thought he was in the Patriots. I didn't even realize.
Yeah. So another note that just came out recently, Justin, is that the Texans are actually still looking for some running back help there. Does that scare you if you're a Duke Johnson owner?
Not really. I mean, when they acquired Duke Johnson, I thought he'll have a pivotal role in the offense, especially with the injury to Kiki Cutie. One thing I would look out for, someone that's very similar to the style that Duke Johnson plays, and a guy who just got cut, which I was beyond shocked about. And even though he's a Jet player, Elijah McGuire got cut by them, and I was kind of shocked that they chose to go the Bilal Powell route and Trenton Cannon route over Elijah McGuire, who's shown that he can run that offense pretty well. So, and I actually thought he's a better version of Ty Montgomery, just someone who can never stay on the field. So I don't really look too mumuch into it if Houston's getting the back. Maybe someone for between the tackles, but I think Duke Johnson is still the guy.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And then the Eagles really didn't have too much to talk about tonight, Courtney. I was trying to find something that the Eagles did today, but there ain't nothing really going there. But what's going on? I know you live there in Philadelphia. What's the talk there with your rookie, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside? Is he going to have a role this year in the offense?
I don't think so. I mean, he's going to be the fourth receiver, but there's so many weapons the Eagles have right now. I mean, it's going to be hard for him to get catches anywhere. So I mean, he can be a weapon, but I think right now it's not the time for him just because of who's ahead of him: Alshon Aguilar, Deshaun Jackson, Zach Ertz. So there's too many mouths to feed. So I think he'll be fine, but just not right now.
Not right now. So be thinking 2020. You think he'll be good to go for that?
Yeah, 2020. I think that would be his time, but as of right now, I don't think so because we still got Mac Hollins too. So unless he gets cut,
yeah, you never know.
I can see 2020.
All right, good stuff. All right, so we have a jam-packed show today. I'm going to kind of explain how we're going to do this. We're going to go all 32 teams. I'm going to ask one question to each of you. Well, each of y'all have your own teams, but I'm going to ask one question, and we're going to try to answer that question today. It's fantasy relevant questions. So I'm going to kick it off here with the NFC South. We'll go to you, Justin, with the Panthers. DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel both being drafted in redraft leagues. Can the Panthers offense support two receivers that'll be fantasy relevant this year?
Maybe, but anything beyond wide receiver 2, probably not, especially for the fact that Cam Newton has a history of not supporting wide receivers that aren't touchdown reliant. And what I mean by that is if you go back to 2017 with Funches, wide receiver 21 in PPR has 63 receptions. And if you hear that number, you think not wide receiver 2 material, but he ended up finishing the year with double-digit touchdowns. Then you go back to 2017 also with Kelvin Benjamin, 63 receptions, but 7 touchdowns. And you look at both of those type of receivers, they're 6'4", they're 230-plus pounds, and then you go to Moore and Samuel, who are very similar size, 5'11", about 210 pounds. They're both slot receivers, and I know everyone's buying into the Moore hype right now, who's going at the 6'6", wide receiver 29 off the board. But when it comes to both of those receivers, I'm going to go for the value with someone like Samuel, who's going in the 8th round, wide receiver 36. And he kind of reminds me of that similar type of style of like Ted Ginn when he had him back in 2015. And in that year, even though Ted Ginn had 10 touchdowns, only had 44 receptions, and only finished as the wide receiver 33. So it's kind of hard to buy into those wide receivers. The last time Cam even had a high-scoring receiver that was very reliable on a week-to-week basis was Steve Smith. And the highest that he finished in the wide receiver rankings with Cam was at 19. So I do think one of them will be wide receiver 2 range. The other one will be a flex play at best. But I'm not really banking on both of them being successful, especially with Christian McCaffrey hogging up all the targets.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think they're both going to be viable on a week-to-week basis. Like 1 week it could be the Moore week, next week it's the Curtis Samuel week, but you're never going to know which week that's going to be. I think best balls are where you want to have those guys, but I'm a little nervous if I own one of those guys, and I'm expecting to get wide receiver 2 value from those guys. All right, Courtney, let's go to the Falcons. Assuming health, is there another RB that's worth drafting for the Falcons besides Devontae Freeman? Is there any of those guys, Ito Smith or any of those guys behind him, worth drafting in redraft leagues?
I think Ito Smith is a good pickup, maybe late 12th, 13th round if you're playing in a 12-team league, or like our league, a 16-team league.
Yeah.
Because, Ito Smith, he played pretty well last year, and we don't know if Devontae Freeman's going to stay healthy either. So I guess he's a breakout candidate for comeback player of the year. So he's going to get most of the carries, but with that Atlanta offense, they always run with 2 running backs usually. So I think Ito Smith, he knows the system. I really like what he did last year with the limited time that he played. So he gets out of the backfield, and I think he's good enough to take a late flyer in like the later rounds.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you're just going to take a late round flyer on him. It's a dart throw. He may or may not stick. But I think that if I'm taking one, it probably is Ito. I know there's a couple other guys there that are pretty decent as well. But I think Ito has that job. It's his job to lose. He didn't really light it up in this preseason, but I think that he did well enough last year to hold down that job for a little bit longer. All right, Ryan, we're going to you with the Bucs now. So the last year, the Bucs had 3 receivers in the top 30 with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and of course Adam Humphries there. This year, they still got Evans and Chris Godwin there, projected to both be top 20 receivers. Is there a third receiver that you want in redraft on this team?
Not really. I think it's kind of actually between Rashard Perryman and Justin Hunter. Neither one of them get me super excited, even though I know that Hunter's a big fan of, or Justin Watson, I'm sorry. Watson's been a fan of multiple people who've been on the show before a while back, but neither one really moved that difference between him and then going towards a little bit more with Chris Godwin picking up the slack there. But there's nobody I really want as a wide receiver group other than a late round flyer, possibly in a deep league.
Agreed. I think that the receiver that picks up the slack there is going to be O.J. Howard. I think O.J. Howard kind of steps into that role of Adam Humphries with a little bit more vertical threat, of course. It's kind of crazy today. I was in an argument with on Facebook about why is O.J. Howard such a high pick, and this guy was trying to tear O.J. Howard down, and I looked some stats up, and you look at the top 10 as far as yards per catch, and O.J. Howard is in there with all those receivers. He's like 16.6 yards per catch, which is a ridiculous rate for a tight end. He's done it 2 years in a row. He did it in his rookie season as well, which is, it's crazy to think that this guy, he's faster than Mike Evans. At least he was with his combine numbers, and Evans is a deep threat. So O.J. Howard is a freak of nature, and I think he's the one that kind of takes over that role there.
Right, and he's going to year 3, which is the consensus breakout for a tight end. He has everything going his way, and like I said, he's an elite talent. He ran a 4.51 at tight end. It's absurd.
It's insane. It's insane. All right, what you got for me, Ryan? You got that last team on there for me.
I do. I have the last question here. Our last team here is the Saints. And of the 3 Saints tight ends had 89 targets combined last year. Jared Cook had 101 for Oakland last year. Does Cook soak up all 89, or does he get a little more still our top option at tight end? Or a top option at tight end?
I think he's. I think what happens is I think he gets less targets than the 101 and probably even less targets than the 89. But I think his touchdowns can go up. I think last year I believe he had 6 touchdowns. I think he becomes that red zone threat for Drew Brees down there. If they're not giving the ball to Kamara, if they're not throwing the ball to Michael Thomas, I think he's the next guy in line to be looked at. And that offense is going to be so high powered that he could get 10 touchdowns this year easy. And I think that makes up the difference between the targets he had last year. And I think also with those targets he had last year, his catch rate wasn't that great because Derek Carr is not a great quarterback, and he couldn't get him the ball where he needed to be. Drew Brees is going to put that ball where it needs to be, so those 70-plus targets that he gets are going to be more quality targets than what he got from Derek Carr. So I think Jared Cook will be just fine. He could definitely be in that top 12 for sure, and I think if he really pans out and stays healthy all year, he can be in the top 5 easy with that offense.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a low-end tight end one, but I think he's going to be one of the more consistent ones. Definitely. I don't think, end of the year, it'll look beautiful, but it might not be like those huge boom games of him.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll be just consistent. He'll be that guy that doesn't, necessarily lose you a week, but he won't win you a week either. So he's just that consistent guy that's going to rack up some points all year. All right, let's move over to the NFC North, and we'll start with the Packers and Justin here. So will Aaron Jones finally be that every down running back that we all hoped that he was over the last couple of years? Is it finally his job?
Yes. The question is, can he stay on the field a certain amount of games throughout the year to make it worth the capital that you're paying to get him? Because right now he's going at the 306, and that's right around the area where the favorite running back in the draft of people is David Montgomery. He's going right around that same area right now. So I do think he becomes the every down back. I think when you look into what he did last year, and he led the league last year in yards per carry amongst all running backs that qualified for the stat. I look at someone like Matt LaFleur, and at first, it originally kind of worried me, him coming into the situation that he is coming in. Very pass-happy scheme. We saw that last year with Tennessee. He tried to make it work with Mariota, and somehow it just didn't. No matter how many targets we peppered Corey Davis with, he just didn't pan out. He matured, though. He matured as a play caller, and you saw that the last 4 weeks of the season when he finally fed the beast, Derrick Henry. And Henry, in those 4 weeks, being that Lewis was out-touching him the first 12 weeks of the season, that last 4 weeks, Lewis had a total of 12 carries compared to Henry's 87, which was a near 5-to-1 ratio total. So based off the way that LaFleur is maturing as a play caller, he's going to want to go play action with Aaron Rodgers. It's something that Aaron Rodgers has been very good at in the past. He's going to want to run the ball a lot with Aaron Jones. And even the previous regime in Green Bay, they even saw the difference in talent between him and Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams averaged 13.5 carries per game when Jones wasn't in the lineup, and then averaged 5.5 carries per game when Jones was in the lineup. So I think it's a significant number. I think that split somewhat still happens. I still think Williams gets his 5 to 7, 8 touches a game, but nothing that should tread you away from drafting Jones in the third round where his current ADP stands.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the biggest issue with him is just health in general, too. I think that he's had some issues with hamstrings and everything else, and that's his biggest issue from keeping him from being that RB1. And I think that they do give him the workload. I think he is definitely going to be a top 15-ish back this year if he can get that workload in that offense. So good call there. All right, Courtney, let's go over to the Bears. And the question is, can the rookie, David Montgomery, does he just step right into that Jordan Howard role and get 250 carries or 250 touches this year? Or do you think that it's a split between him and Mike Davis?
I think it's going to be a split, actually. I know there's a lot of hype going into David Montgomery, and it's warranted because he's proved in the preseason he can play. So he's going to get a lot of runs. But I can see Tariq Cohen biting into that as well. I mean, he's still a threat for the Bears, and he catch out of the backfield on one of those dual threat running backs. So David Montgomery, I think by the season's end, he'll be the clear cut favorite for that lineup. But I think Tariq Cohen, we're sleeping on him a little bit. He's definitely dropping in drafts a lot lately. I've seen him drop, and I know in one of my drafts, he dropped to like the 5th round. So. But David Montgomery, I think by the end of the year, he will definitely be the guy. But 250 carries or 250 touches, I think that's a little too many. He might get about 200, but I don't see 250 or more.
Yeah, I agree. I think they made that trade for Mike Davis there, and I think that he does get some work. He gets enough to sort of lighten the load for David Montgomery. He doesn't step right into those 200. I think Jordan Howard had 270 last year. He was like top 10 in touches last year, despite how bad he actually was in fantasy. But he had a lot of touches, and I think that they split it, Mike Davis and David Montgomery. And, of course, I think Tariq Cohen stays about the same with his touches. I think he had 100 receptions last year or something, or 99 receptions. So I think that he stays right in that range as well. All right, Ryan, let's go to the Lions. And it's a simple question here. I know the rumor is that Hawkinson there, the new rookie tight end, has not won the starting job yet. But we all think that he will eventually have that starting job. Is he draftable in redraft leagues as a rookie tight end?
Easy answer, no. Right now, I know tight end's terrible, but the Lions' offense is not good. If we're looking at the past 6 years, their best offensive yardage season was 13th. That was in 2017. Other than that, we're 24, 21, 20, 19. Before that, they were fantastic, but there's been a lot of change. There's still a decent amount of mouths to feed there with Galladay, Marvin Jones being healthy, the Kerryon Johnson stepping up. They want to be a run-heavy team. They still have Jesse James, who's not good, but he's kind of like a gnat. He's probably not going to go away and bite into touches too. So I'm steering clear of him. Dynasty, yes, he's going to be a buy low because people are going to be frustrated because they're not patient. But this year, I think I'm going to skip.
All right. Yeah, I think that rookie season for tight ends, a lot of people, they get hyped up, especially a guy like Hawkinson, who I think was the first off the board this year. If not, he was the second off the board. But I think that they hype him up, and they don't realize how hard of a transition it is to go from tight end into the NFL. And it takes 2 or 3 years before they're actually relevant. And I think that Hawkinson, as good as a blocker as he is, I think that team wants to run. And I think Hawkinson's going to do a lot more blocking this year than he is receiving. So he's not fantasy relevant for me for this year. Maybe mid-season pickup, maybe watch him on the waiver wires, but I'm not drafting him.
Right, especially with his style. If he was basically a split-out wide end, like his former teammate Noah Fant, I think he'd have more of a role, or even like an Evan Ingram. But he's an inline tight end, and that's going to make it a lot harder for him.
Yep, agreed. All right, what you got me for the Vikings?
All right, for the Vikings, I got the third leading pass catcher. Who's the third leading pass catcher, regardless of position, behind Diggs and Thielen?
So last year, I looked this up. Last year, the number 3 receiver last year was actually Kyle Rudolph at, I think, 62 catches, I believe. And then Dalvin Cook was number 4. So I think this year, Dalvin Cook actually takes that role. I think it's going to be Diggs, Thielen, and then Dalvin Cook will have the next amount of targets on that team. You figure Dalvin Cook missed a bunch of games last year. Dalvin Cook's a huge playmaker. He wants to get the ball in his. They want to get his ball in his hands as much as they possibly can. So I think those 40 or 50 targets he had last year, I think kind of go up a little bit this year. I think Kyle Rudolph has become that blocking tight end that they want. That's why they drafted Irv Smith Jr. to be that more receiving tight end. So they leave Kyle Rudolph back to block because Kyle Rudolph is a great tight end. People think, he's kind of fallen off because he hasn't been that good in the passing game lately. But Kyle Rudolph is a complete tight end. He's a blocking tight end. They love to keep him back on the offense to block. And because of that, he can't catch passes. That's why his numbers have gone down in fantasy. But for NFL purposes, he's a great tight end. So I think Irv Smith Jr. kind of takes that passing role. Kyle Rudolph blocks a little bit more, and they get the ball to Dalvin Cook a little bit more in the passing game. So that is my thought there.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's going to be him too. There's kind of a lack of talent after the top end guys.
Yeah, I almost wanted to pick Irv Smith Jr. because I do think that they use him more in the passing game, but I just don't think they're going to use him quite enough to be the third leading receiver there. I think he gets some targets there. I do think that he's one of those tight ends that might be somewhat valuable on a streaming basis, but no one that I want to draft either.
No.
All right, Justin, we're going to go to your Giants next, the NFC East here. Ooh. And so if and when the Giants make the move to play your boy Daniel Jones, does that help or hurt the other skill players in this offense?
Well, I mean, we've all seen what he did, right, this preseason, and he looked fantastic. I'm not one of those Giants fans that are going to sit here and say that we proved the doubters wrong, even though I made a joke about that in the beginning of the episode. I'm just joshing it around, and realistically, I don't think it moves the needle down for anybody specifically. If it does for anyone, it's going to be Evan Ingram, and the only reason why I would say that is because the rapport between Eli and Ingram goes beyond anything that I've seen aside from the rapport that they had with OBJ. Ingram is such a different type of weapon on the field when OBJ is not there, and Eli's going to target him heavily this year, which is why I have a lot of shares and a lot of stock in Ingram going into next year. Now, for someone like Tate, I think the needle doesn't move. I think whatever he is with Eli, he's going to be the same with Jones. I think the needle only points up for one player only, and that's going to be Sterling Shepard. Because, I mean, as much as I've watched Eli Manning and as much as I love him as a quarterback, his deep ball has not been the same in the last 3-4 years. I know there was a Twitter video going around during that little debacle between OBJ and the Giants about a month ago, how it was like every single pass play that OBJ threw deep. I mean, that Eli threw deep to OBJ, and it was like either on the throne or incomplete, or he had to come back for it. His deep ball is not the same, and Daniel Jones, if he's proven anything this preseason, it's the fact that he has some nice touch and he has the arm strength to go deep, and I think that's going to benefit Shepard, being that he'll be the deep guy on the team. You don't see Tate going down the field. Latimer will probably be the slot, and Fowler as well, but I don't see them going down the field as often as I would see Shepard. So I think everything will stay the same. Ingram, I will give a little notch down, only because there has been no chemistry or rapport with Jones and Ingram. Nothing said at all. The preseason OTAs, nothing at all between them. So for all we know, they cannot even hit it off.
Yeah, good stuff there. All right, so yeah, I think I'm with you there. I think that's kind of how it's going to go there. Do you think that they want to really keep Jones on the bench all season, or do you think that they're just saying that out loud?
I think as long as we're winning games, he's going to sit the bench, and that's just me being honest. This is not your Kurt Warner, Eli Manning situation. When we brought Kurt Warner in, it was easy to bench him, and we were a 5-3 at the time. People forget that we were 5-3 at the time. Like we were, I don't know if we were first in the division, but we were definitely in the playoff talks at that time, and we still pulled the plug on Warner and put Eli in. I think Eli is just too much of a legend in this franchise for us to just pull him that quickly. I think he has a longer leash. And this goes back to that whole Geno Smith situation. Because of that, I think the Giants just want him to go out the right way. As a fan, I want to see Jones. I really do. But if we're winning games, I can understand, in hindsight. But ultimately, I do think we see him because even though the first 8 games of the season are pretty easy, that back last 8, especially Courtney versus your Eagles twice in the last 6 weeks of the season, is going to be brutal. It's going to be brutal. So you're going to see Daniel Jones, but you're going to see him against the top 10 defenses in the league. So I don't even know if I want to see that.
Right, yeah. Actually, it was funny because when I was doing these questions, I actually pulled up their schedule to see, like, all right, are they going to lose their first few games, and will the controversy start? And I looked at the first few games, like, well, they can win that game, and they can win that game, and they can win that game. It's like, all right, so they're not making the change in the beginning of the season. They might make it towards the end of the season. So, yeah, good call there. All right, Courtney, I'm going to go to you next for your Eagles. And I kind of, I'm going to mix up a little bit. I know I gave you the Arcega-Whiteside in the news and notes, so let's go with Miles Sanders. Is he going to be that running back that everybody wants in fantasy, or is Jordan Howard going to steal enough touches away from him that he's not going to be relevant until midseason?
I think it goes back to the Atlanta Falcons. It's the Devontae Freeman, Edo Smith type of situation where Jordan Howard he'll be the first and second down back, but Miles Sanders is getting a lot of hype here. So I like him. I really do. He got the speed, he can go in between the tackles, tough runner. And he played behind Saquon Barkley, so he's got. So definitely, he's on my fantasy team too. So hopefully he does well. But I like Miles Sanders. I do like Miles Sanders a lot. I think he's gonna. And Doug Peterson loves to rotate those running backs. So we usually keep about 3 or 4 running backs as it is. You just don't know. He goes with the hot hand most of the time. So Miles Sanders is gonna get a great chance to shine, and I think he will. I think he's gonna get a lot of touches. I think by the end of the year, especially if the Eagles are rolling, which I think they will by the end of the season, Miles Sanders will be the clear-cut number 1 running back for the Eagles.
All right, yeah, good stuff. I love Miles Sanders. Coming out of college, he was my number 1 running back this year. Actually, number 2 overall, right behind N'Keal Harry as far as overall running backs.
Right.
And I was hyping him up, and I had a GIF of him making this spin move. I forget who they were playing, but I played that GIF every time I made the argument. I was like, this is why you draft him number 1. He literally did the spin move where 2 guys ran to each other, and I played that thing a million times, man. It's just a thing of beauty. I think he could be something special there in Philly with that offense as well. So good stuff there. All right, Ryan, we're going to go to your boy. We're going to the Cowboys and Mr. Tony Pollard. Assuming Zeke sits out for a few games, is Tony Pollard built to carry the load, or is there some type of committee here with Alfred Morris or somebody else in this backfield?
Such a loaded question because I think he can carry the load for a normal running back, but the load that Zeke carries is ridiculous. Zeke had 43 more attempts last year than any other running back in the league.
Wow.
I mean, he had 304 rush attempts. That doesn't even take into consideration his receiving. I don't think Pollard's going to be in that range. Best case scenario, he'd be, if he started the whole season, maybe like a 220 guy. So maybe 60% of what Zeke can do carries-wise. And it's still enough with their offensive line and their potential offense to be fantasy relevant where you can feel completely comfortable starting him. But thinking he can step in there and do what Zeke does, one of the best running backs in the league, if not the best, it's asking a lot out of him. But he's definitely somebody, if I have my team, I'm happy on until Zeke comes back from Cabo.
Nice. Yeah, so if you have him on your fantasy team, do you think he makes your starting lineup? Like, you think you got him at flex?
It depends how many flex and how strong my team is. I normally go running back heavy, but if I was a person who went zero running back, or if I was a person who kind of did the Saquon Barkley first round and pound receiver tight end after that, possibly could be.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, what you got for me for the Redskins?
Is there anybody who you think is going to be fancy, or if you had to start redraft this year, who would it be?
If I had to pick one player from the Redskins to start for a redraft, I guess it has to be Darius Geis. I know we didn't see a whole lot of him this preseason, but he did get, I think, a good amount of carries in the preseason, that third preseason game. I think Adrian Peterson's probably going to share the load a little bit there, but I think eventually they drafted Geis. They want Geis to be the guy. This team isn't going to be very good. And I just think that, running back is the position that you want if you're going to pick one guy from this team, because I think even Keenum, with him starting, the receivers with, Paul Richardson, he's not even healthy right now, and Josh Doxson's been terrible, and McLaurin's a rookie that's kind of learning his way. It's just an offense that you want no part of. Jordan Reed can't stay on the field. He's got 9 concussions in the last 2 years, which is ridiculous. He's still even trying to play. But I think Darius Geis is the one that, if I'm starting somebody, it has to be Darius Geis.
Dude, he dribbled that one guy's head like a basketball.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
All right, moving into the NFC West, and we're going to the Cardinals. So, Justin, we're going to you. At the end of the season, the receiver with the most fantasy points for the Cardinals is blank. Who is the receiver you want there?
Not Christian Kirk.
Ooh.
And I'm going to get bashed for this from the fantasy community. I already know. But it's just something I really feel strongly about. Actually, on my fantasy podcast, I actually predicted that Christian Kirk would be a bust at his current ADP. So, and I had many reasons for that, but I'll try to sum it up pretty quickly. I mean, 3 of the guys who out-targeted him last year are still on the roster: Fitz, David Johnson, and Ricky Seals-Jones. Now, Ricky Seals-Jones is not even listed as a starter anymore. Charles Clay is. I guess that's kind of weird. I actually didn't notice that until after I started researching it when I was asked the question. Last year, Kirk had 68 targets. That put him on pace for 90 because he didn't play a full 16-game season. And when you talk about the air raid offense, it's just a fancy way to say the double spread. That's basically a fancy way to say it. There's a lot of trips, a lot of single ups. The focus on the air raid offense is the slot receiver. It's the slot receiver. And last year, Larry Fitzgerald was the guy in the slot for the Cardinals. And I know he's getting up there in age, and it seems like every year when you're counting Larry Fitzgerald out, he just comes right back in and produces for fantasy owners. Last year, he ran 24.5 routes per game, received 5 targets per game, and had 3 catches per game from the slot position. So, I just can't buy into Kirk, so that's why I'm saying it's not going to be him. And then you see what they added through the draft this year. They added the most prolific slot receiver in Isabella, who his comparison was Cutie. So go figure, someone who ran the air raid offense back in college. And then Keyshawn Johnson, who also ran the same offense in college as well. So, and then you see what Keyshawn Johnson is doing in the preseason. He's just been balling. I don't think there's a receiver that's been playing better than him right now in the preseason, and he's probably going to win that slot job. So, I'm going to give it to one of the slot guys. I'm going to say either Spitz or Keyshawn Johnson or maybe even Isabella if he so happens to end up starting. I just can't sit here and say it's going to be Christian Kirk.
All right, man, you hurt my heart because I had Christian Kirk. I got him ranked pretty high there. I thought he was going to be something special this year. So. You're definitely going against the grain. He definitely has the potential. I mean, he caught 92 passes one time in college. His senior year, the year before he came out. So he definitely has the talent. But then I was also looking at Cliff Kingsbury college stats. And did you know that the receiver that he had that had the most receptions ever under his offense was Jason Morrow with 102 catches, a tight end, not even a receiver. So it's just I don't know what to expect of it. And plus, the offense hasn't looked good this preseason anyways. Yeah, I think I've heard the preseason that they were not even running the offense really. But I think you're looking at some stats from the past, and that definitely, I'm looking at his stats from last year and thinking that he's going to take a step forward. But if you're saying the slot in that offense is the most important position, then yeah, Larry Fitzgerald should be the guy. Because I was looking at his stats. He's got 600 yards last year, 3 touchdowns in 12 games. And that offense was historically bad. So if he can do that in a historically bad offense, I was predicting that he would be better this year. But maybe it's Fitz. Maybe Fitz has one more year of relevancy for fantasy before he retires. So Good stuff.
I still think Kirk is good. I just don't think at his ADP. I don't think he'll outperform his ADP.
Gotcha. All right, good stuff. All right, Courtney, let's go to you with the Seahawks. Is there a pass catcher outside of Tyler Lockett worth drafting for the Seahawks team?
I don't think so. I don't really like their receiving core at all. I guess you can do DK Metcalf, but he's injured right now. Just had the knee surgery. They said he's day to day. I read that he wants to play in week 1, but would need surgery. When it says something about surgery, you just don't know how long he's going to be. I mean, I know he looks like the Hulk and everything, but I wasn't a big fan of him coming out of college either. You know, he's got the size. He can get downfield a little bit, but I don't think so. I mean, I guess David Moore, but he tailed off last year for the Seahawks as well. If anything, I would go with maybe a running back. Whoever wins that third down back, Rashad Penny, maybe, Kissick, or C.J. Persise. One of those guys I think could be the second pass catcher because now that they lost, what was the receiver?
Baldwin. Doug Baldwin.
Yeah, Doug Baldwin. Thank you. Doug Baldwin. Sorry about that. Yeah, Doug Baldwin. I don't see any of those guys even becoming Doug Baldwin at all. So I think Rashard Penny might be this pass catcher, the second pass catcher for them, for the Seahawks.
That's definitely a good point because, I think that, they don't throw the ball very much at all. I mean, I think I looked at some of Russell Wilson's stats last year. He had games with 11 completions. 11 completions. Can you imagine? We got receivers in the league.
Somehow he'd have 2 touchdowns with it.
Yeah, exactly. It was just the most efficient thing you could possibly imagine. But it was insane last year, and I'm not even buying Lockett. I'm against Lockett because of that efficiency. He was just, in history, he was the most efficient receiver to ever play. I mean, with the receptions he had, the touchdowns he had, his catch percentage. Russell Wilson was perfect passer rating throwing to him. It can't be repeated. So I'm actually off Lockett train as well. I think the only thing I want to own there in Seattle is the running back. So I agree there 100%. All right, Ryan.
What's crazy? I'll say what's crazy with them. On PFF, they were talking about it. He still he was in the top 3 in the league for throws into the end zone, though.
Really? Wow.
With Wilson. So he was taking shots.
Shots. I guess if you're running the ball,
how that efficiency was there.
Yeah, I say if you're running the ball that much as a quarterback, getting paid that much and as good as I am, when I get a chance to throw the ball, I'm taking my shots. I think so. That's a good point there. All right, Ryan, let's go to the Rams.
And don't forget about the Chris Carson too. I mean, they're talking about he's going to be part of the passing too. So
That's
receiving.
True.
So we'll see how that works out. I think the running backs might lead them in receiving.
Yeah,
actually,
that's a good
I
point.
love Chris Carson.
That's a good point.
Me too.
All right, we're going to the Rams, Ryan. It's the receivers for the Rams, all 3 of them, Cooks, Woods, and Kupp, are all being drafted as top 24 receivers. Is it possible that they all end up there at the end of the season, barring any injuries?
It's possible, but I still think only 2 of the 3 will make be top 24. I think Kupp will be just on the outside. I know everybody loves him, and rightfully so, but he's had a year off. He's not a spring chicken, even though he's been in the league for a few years. But Robert Woods has taken over as his go-to guy and can do a little bit of everything. He's their most well-rounded receiver. Brandon Cooks is going to get his because he's an elite deep threat. And it kind of leaves Kupp as a scraps there. And I think D'Angelo Henderson might be a guy who's going to hop in on the targets a little bit too. So I think he'll be close, but I think he'll still be on the outside looking in.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's go to my team next, Ryan. What you got for my team?
I was going to say, are they going to win any games this year? But we'll go with any pass catchers not named Kittle or Dante Pettis worth taking.
So the short answer to that question is probably no. I don't think that anybody outside of Pettis and Kittle are going to be fantasy relevant. But, Jalen Hurd is hurt. He's not going to play week 1. Trent Taylor is hurt. He's not going to play week 1. So this receiving core that had a bunch of pieces now is now losing pieces. So Marquise Goodwin's going to start. Debo is playing as the second team. I think they're going to have your former receiver, Jordan Matthews, Courtney. He's going to be playing the slot position. So I think if I'm taking a chance on one of these guys to not Dante Pettis or not Kittle to be a receiver that's going to make it this year, I think I'm taking Debo Samuels. And we saw in our preseason already that he's a big play guy. they get him the ball in multiple ways, not just in the passing game, but they had him run a play, a running game play this past preseason. It went for like 40-some yards. So I think that they're going to find ways to get him the ball. And with Jalen Hurd missing time, because he was kind of going to be their gadget guy, he was going to be their tight end / receiver / running back. But with him hurt, and who knows how long he'll be out for, I think Deebo Samuel kind of steps into that role. And he'd be the one guy I would take a chance on late round, like 12th, 13th round, and just take a shot to see if he actually pops. Because I think, Pettis has been struggling in the preseason. We've heard it, numerous times. And I think that Deebo could eventually make his way into the starting lineup there. So he's the one guy I would take in some of my leagues.
I took him as my last pick in my draft last night.
Yeah,
Do you think he'll get any play on special teams?
I haven't heard him play on special teams, but he might. It's quite possible because he is with the second team right now, and I think he's done pretty well there. Trent Taylor would have been somebody I would have picked in PPR leagues, but that Liz Frank injury he's got, it's going to hold him out for a couple of weeks, and I don't know if I would take a chance on him, but he might be a PPR guy once he comes back. All right, guys, take a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll tackle the AFC next.
In the unpredictable world of fantasy sports, when all hope seems lost and chaos and confusion rule, one hero will rise. And change everything. GoingFor2.com. Because no one remembers the extra point.
All right, and we are back, and I'm here with Justin, Courtney, and Ryan, and we are asking one question for all 32 teams. We just did the NFC. Moving to the AFC now. We're going to go to the AFC South first, and with the Colts, who've been in the news quite a bit lately for this Andrew Luck news. I'm not going to ask the obvious questions there. I'm going to ask T.Y. Hilton, Marlon Mack. Those are the two guys that people are drafting. Who is number 3 in this pecking order in this offense? Is it Ebron? Is it Jack Doyle? Is it Neiman Hines? Is it is it the rookie? Who is the number 3 guy there, Courtney?
I still think it's Eric Ebron. I actually like him, man. I had him on my fantasy team last year. Picked him up in the waiver wire. I know he had 13 touchdowns, so that's going to be an outlier. I think that he doesn't get that many touchdowns. But now with Jacoby Brissett, he's going to need a security blanket. So why not Ebron? I think he's going to. And he probably won't. I think he definitely won't get 13 touchdowns. I think he'll still get between 7 and 8 touchdowns. He gets open. Somehow he gets open every time. And before that season, he's been a bust. But I actually think Ebron will be their third receiver in the pecking order.
All right, good stuff there. I know Ryan's a big lover of Eric Ebron. He loved him last year. I don't know.
I'm off him this year, though.
Yeah, you're off him this year.
I was off him pre-luck. Pre-luck. Yeah, I liked him at his old ADP.
Right. Yeah, I think his ADP's. I agree. I think for me, I think it's Neiman Hines. I think Neiman Hines plays a bigger role. I think he does play that same kind of role. You said the security blanket. I think Neiman Hines is that pass catching back. I think he leads I think he's the second leader receiver on the team probably this year with his targets that he's gonna get out of the backfield because Marlon Mack's not much of a receiving running back. So I think that Neiman Hines. We saw last year when they were down, the Colts were down. Neiman Hines was the back to own because they threw the ball to him a lot. Marlon Mack, of course, wasn't quite as good with a running back, but I think that Neiman Hines is my guy. But I can see Ebron as well. He's that big red zone guy, so if he gets that 8-9 touchdowns like you're saying, then he will definitely be the second or the third guy in that team. All right, Justin, let's go to you and the Titans. I got kind of the same question for you. Derrick Henry, Corey Davis, anybody else you're drafting in redraft leagues besides those two guys?
Yeah, can we acknowledge the fact that it's kind of pathetic that Mariota is not even an answer for this? That's how bad he's been as a quarterback. Max might even get, he might even get benched for Tannehill, which is even sadder. But Corey Davis, first of all, I guess we had to kind of give him a shot, first of all, because he's a third-year wide receiver, even though he was super underwhelming last year. But for me, it's Delaney Walker. and it has to do for the main reason that the tight end position is super, super thin. And Jeff, I actually believe I said this last time I was on. I play fantasy baseball, and the catcher position is the thinnest and the hardest position to draft in all of fantasy sports. Tight end is right there. Because outside the top tier guys, the drop off is just ridiculous. You're basically grabbing a dart, you're throwing it at a board, and you're just hoping that guy hits. So for someone like Delaney Walker, who's been a tight end one every year since he's joined the Titans, aside from last year, 2018, when he got hurt, it's been tremendous. And he actually finished in the top 5 3 times within that span. And the rapport is there with Mariota. He played in the second preseason game. He saw 2 targets, caught both of them. One was for a touchdown. He looked very healthy. He passed the eye test, at least for me, and he definitely looks motivated. He was interviewed after the game, said that he feels disrespected. No one's showing him love at the tight end position no more. He said all these young guys are coming into the league, and people are putting them above him. So I kind of see where he's coming from. I do believe it's a 14-year vet, so he's definitely been in the league a long time. Thing is, what kind of league are you drafting in? I know in our Going for 2 league, we have a 16-man team, so he's 100% getting drafted in there. If you play in 10 or 12-man leagues, or you're not looking for, a backup tight end, maybe he doesn't get drafted because right now his ADP is a 12th tight end off the board, and I think that's a little bit of a push because I like guys like Andrews and Gesicki who are both going after him. So, sorry, Ryan, I had to say Gesicki.
You make mistakes on the show. We understand. It's live. It happens.
All right, yeah. So I do think on certain circumstances, Walker is absolutely draftable, especially because it's the position. The position speaks for itself.
Yeah, I agree with 100%. I think Walker is going to be a surprise this year. I think that everyone kind of forgot about him and how good he was before he got injured. And I just want to kind of mention something too. My 49ers have been very good drafting tight ends, haven't they? I mean, we got Vernon Davis. We got Vance McDonald, who's now with Pittsburgh. We drafted Delaney Walker, and now we got George Kittle. And I just think that we draft tight ends, and we just happen to hit. I mean, even going back to Brent Jones back in the day when he was like one of the first tight ends to catch passes as much as he did. So that's one thing that we do well.
Something funny about Walker, actually. I actually drafted him Scott Fishbowl last year. So he played a quarter and a half before getting hurt. A quarter and a half. He still finished as a tight end 9 in week 1. A quarter and a half.
That's crazy.
Dude, he's hilarious. I saw an interview with him. They asked him what he thought when they took Johnny Smith. He said he went out to management and told them they just wasted a pick.
Nice.
But I think you saw that last year. He was he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan, we're going to you with the Texans next. Over the last 5 seasons, the Texans have been dead last in targets to the running back. Lamar Miller last year had only 35 targets from the position. Now, of course, they got Duke Johnson, who had a career low last year of 62 targets, which would have been the highest of any team or any running back on the Texans over the last 5 years. So, over under 70 targets for Duke this year in that Texans offense.
I'm not with the under. Pre-Lamar Miller injury, I had him at 56. I have him up a little bit since then, but it's not Deshaun Watson's DNA, man. That dude takes shots. He has the best receiver in the league. He has an elite deep threat with Will Fuller. He has Kiki QT, who's supposed to be picked for week 1 now. And you have Duke Johnson as your 4th option. If you're him other than a dump-off, who are you going to look for there, man?
Yep.
And plus, Watson has his legs to kind of bail him out of situations, which makes dumping off the running back a little bit less of a thing for him. So I think Duke's going to have his career high in rushing attempts, but I don't think he's going to have as many receptions as you expect.
Yeah, that would hurt his value tremendously too. I think if he does get less than 70 targets, I think that's where he gets his money at. And
100%.
It's a little risky, especially with them, trying to trade now for some running backs. You've heard the Kenyon Drake trade and a few other trades are trying to go out there. So I'd be a little worried if I was a Duke Johnson owner. All right, so you got the Jags for me, Ryan. What you got for my question for the Jags?
They said Fournette's going to be way more involved this year in the passing game. He had 26 targets last year after getting 48 his rookie season. Over-unders at 60 targets for Fournette. What do you got?
I think I'm going to go under. I think he's going to be closer to what he was in his rookie season, probably around that 50 target range. I just don't think that the Jacksonville Jaguars throw the ball enough for him to get those many targets. I just think that they want to run the ball, play really good defense, limit their turnovers, and be that kind of grinded out kind of team. And because of that, I think he is more involved than he was last year with his 26 targets. But I do think that he doesn't eclipse probably 50, 55 targets, somewhere in that range. So he's not getting to that 60 point mark or 60 target mark. So I will take the under on that one. All right, going to the AFC North now. Going to the Steelers. This one's kind of similar to the question we asked him before. The number 2 pass catcher behind Juju is blank, Justin.
Realistically, it's probably going to be James Conner, and I would not be surprised if that's the case. But talking about as a wide receiver and or tight ends perspective, I'm going to go with Dante Moncrief. And one of the main things I look at is I know AB walked out the door with 168 targets. So when you see that, it's hard to predict Juju's going to go any higher than he already had. He had 162 last year. Yeah, maybe he may see a small bump. But I want a guy who's going to be on the field. I know he didn't get peppered with targets the little bit that he was on the field in their preseason game, but Moncrief did catch 2 catches. Ben was 8 for 13. Of the 8 passes he completed, 4 of them went to Juju Smith. So if you tell me Moncrief is getting 2 of the other 4, I mean, I'll take that. So and on top of that, he was on the field for 19 of the possible 20 snaps of all the starters. So give me the guy who's going to be on the field, and give me the guy who is going to be opposite Juju. And, maybe Juju could be the next AB where Moncrief could kind of get that Juju target share. Maybe not going to get 168, I'll tell you that right now. Maybe lucky to get anywhere between 100 to 110. But I do like Moncrief as the second pass catcher on that offense. And if you go back to 2015, which was the last year that Moncrief played a full 16-game season with an actual decent quarterback in Andrew Luck. I'm not counting the 16 games he played last year with Bortles, because that was just a bliss. He had 105 targets that year, 64 catches, 733 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I think that's 100% in the realm. Possibly even could improve on those numbers if he plays a full 60 games with a quarterback like Big Ben. And also, he's going right now as a wide receiver 47. I would bet money 100% he's going to outplay that ADP.
100% agree. I love Moncrief. I've been getting him in all my leagues, all my deep leagues. I think I own him in the Scott Fish Bowl. I own him, I think, in a few other deep leagues that I play in. So I've been drafting him everywhere I can get him, because I think he is at number 2 in that offense. I think I agree, though. I think it probably will be Connor, but I think Moncrief gets plenty of love as well. I think being a veteran player, Big Ben is kind of that quarterback that just trusts his guy. If you watch him play, he throws that ball even when they're covered. He just trusts their guy to go get it. So if Moncrief gets that, I think that he does become that number 2 guy there. So good stuff. All right, we're going to the Bengals next. We got Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd, and then who is the third option, or is there a third option while A.J. Green is out, Courtney? Is there a third option there that we want to worry about in fantasy while A.J. Green is out?
Not really, but if I had to pick one, it would be Giovanni Bernard. I'm going with the veteran. Somehow, some way, he ends up on teams. I don't know how he does it, but when people are drafting, but I like Giovanni Bernard. I think he has a bounce back year. I know Joe Mixon is going to be the lead back, not like he's the official lead back, but Giovanni Bernard, he sees the field, and they might actually play both of them together a lot of plays too. So I do like Giovanni Bernard. I know he's going there like ranking like 162 in drafts, so people are still picking him in drafts. So he gets targets, catches out of the backfield, another running back that can catch out of the backfield. He's a veteran. I know they got a new system implementing, but I like Giovanni Bernard as the third guy in that offense.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that he could step in and get some of those targets as well. I think he's kind of the guy that can split out in the slot and get some of those targets from Andy Dalton. And I think that Giovanni Bernard is definitely, he'll spell Mixon on some plays as well. He'll come in on the third down when Mixon is tired or after a long run. So I think Gio is that third guy. Now, will he be a guy you want to start? Probably not. But he's a good bench player. He's a good bye-week fill-in, that kind of guy. So I think Gio's a great play. And, of course, if Mixon goes down, he becomes an elite play at that point. I think he becomes the guy that gets to all the work in that offense. So, great
John
point
Ross
there.
season, man.
John Ross, you don't be beating that drum.
Another John Ross sighting. We'll see.
John who?
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. All right, Ryan, we're going to your Ravens next. And Buck Allen had the most targets on the Ravens last year for the running back position at 48 targets. They drafted Justice Hill, who's kind of that receiving down running back. Everyone's drafting him as such. So over under 50 targets for Justice Hill this year.
Under. Kind of similar to Watson. They didn't really. Lamar doesn't really dump off that much. Most of his dump offs are for the tight ends. who kind of leak out in the flats a little bit more. And they're going to be rotating their running backs so heavily in Baltimore this year between Ingram and Hill and Gus Edwards and Ken Dixon in there. It's going to be hard for someone to get 50 targets in that offense, especially with not a high pass total. I have him slated for catching right around 30 balls. I can see maybe the 40s tops, but not much more.
All right, good stuff there. So Justice Hill, is he fantasy relevant this year then? If he's not catching more than 50 passes, is he to get enough work in the running game to be relevant in redraft?
I think he's a stash in redraft.
Okay.
If there's injuries, I think his volume goes up. But fully healthy Mark Ingram kind of makes it a little bit harder for him.
Fair enough. All right, you got my Browns question. What is it?
For the Browns, can they really support 4 fantasy-relevant players with Chubb, Landry, OBJ, and Njoku?
The short answer to that question is no, but I will sort of elaborate a little bit. I don't think they can do it consistently. I think that you're going to have those weeks where Njoku gets 2 touchdowns. You have those weeks where Landry gets, 12 targets, but I don't think that, week in and week out, you're not going to want to have, Njoku or Landry. I think that they're going to be that sort of fringe player. Njoku's going to be very touchdown dependent. You figure when you got Landry out there who's a target monster, you got OBJ who needs his targets. Nick Chubb now is involved in the passing game. Njoku's kind of that odd man out. I think he's going to be very touchdown dependent, which a lot of tight ends are touchdown dependent. I think he'll still be in that top 12 range for tight ends. He'll catch 6, 7, 8 touchdowns and be relevant. But a week in and week out sort of production, he won't get those targets that you're going to get from like a Zach Ertz or even an Evan Ingram, where he gets tons of targets, he gets tons of volume, even doesn't catch a touchdown, he's still relevant. Landry, I think, will have games where he disappears. I think Landry will have those games where he gets 12 targets, 13 targets, but I think there'll be games where he gets 4 targets or 3 targets in the game that Nick Chubb might get 20 plus carries. That limits Landry's targets because the rest of those targets are going to probably go to OBJ. So consistently, I think they can support OBJ and Chubb. And then a week-to-week basis, depending on matchup, Landry and Njoku might step into relevance. They're still all draftable. I just wouldn't, put my stock into those guys as being my starters. Njoku maybe as a tight end because that position is so weak that you could put him there and be a starter. But week in and week out, I don't see it. All right, moving to the AFC East, and we're going to the Patriots. And this one's a very simple question for you, Justin. Josh Gordon ends the season as a flex, receiver 3, receiver 2, or receiver 1 this year?
Okay, so short answer. Two and or very, very high wide receiver 3. Now, I'm going to take week 1 of last year and just throw it out the window. That was with the Browns. That was before the trade. Ends up missing 2 games when he ends up going to the Patriots. So through those 11 games that he actually played with the Patriots from weeks 4 to 15, he was the wide receiver 27 in PPR, but was wide receiver 34 on a points per game basis. And then overall on the season, he was wide receiver 47. We know Gronk was there last year. He took up 72 targets, and he was a shell himself, but he's gone. Edelman, I get it. I guess he's the guy. I mean, he's being drafted as, a high-end wide receiver 2, wide receiver like 15 or 14 off the board. So I feel like that's too much of a high price to pay for Edelman, but I get it. He's the guy there. N'Keal Harry, they drafted. N'Keal Harry is interesting because he went from like a late single round draft pick, so like 8th, 9th round in fantasy drafts. So all of a sudden he's going at the ending of the 13th or not even drafted at all. And I found that very interesting. And you obviously see from the moment that Gordon was reinstated to now, which is what makes the difference. So, but in the 4 games last year that Gronk wasn't playing and Gordon was, he averaged 300 to 103 yards on 4 catches, which is a ridiculous yards per catch. Yeah. But then if you look at the Brady and Gordon connection, Brady has never averaged more yards per target to a receiver than he has with Josh Gordon.
Wow. And
I know it's a small sample size, but he averages 11.3 yards per attempt to Gordon. The highest, second highest was Gronk, and then the first highest was Randy Moss back in 2007 when they had like that 20 touchdown connection. So yes, I do think he could be a low wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3. But the thing is, his price is a 6th round price right now for Gordon. You're paying that with knowledge, knowing that he can any minute just relapse and just get off the field, unfortunately.
Yep, that is true. It's definitely a risk you're taking with Josh Gordon, and I don't think I'm taking that risk in the 6th round. All right, we'll move to the Bills, and we are up against the clock, so we're going to do some quick fire here. Let's make these analyses kind of short here. Courtney, at the end of the season, the running back with the most fantasy points for the Bills is blank.
LaShawn McCoy. I still think he's the most talented back on the Bills. Got Devin Singletary, the rookie. Frank Gore, who's about 90 years old, somehow still producing. But I still think it's LaShawn McCoy. I think he's still, like I said, the most talented back they have. Still can produce. They just got to get the football. And the Bills just are poor offense, but I still think he's going to be the guy.
All right, good stuff. And we'll move over to the Jets. And Ryan, Sam Darnold makes the year 2 leap like picks in the past, like Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, and Mitch Trubisky. He makes that year 2 leap and becomes just below elite level fantasy quarterback.
I think absolutely. I think he lands somewhere between Wentz and Trubisky. I think he's a better quarterback prospect than Trubisky. I think he has a lot of talent around him, especially the addition of Lev Bell. I think helps open everything up for that pass game with the deep threats like Robbie Anderson there.
All right, good stuff. Going to the AFC West, and we're going back to you, Courtney, with the Chiefs. Does Damian Williams finish the season as the starting running back for the Chiefs, or does somebody take over for him?
Yes, he does. I'm really big on Damian Williams. I mean, he has Andy Reid as his coach, so Andy Reid is very productive with running back. So I think he's just, Damian Williams started real slow in his career, but now it's his job to lose. So I think he definitely will be their lead back all through the season.
All right, good stuff. And we're going to go straight to the Raiders with Justin. Assuming health, where does Antonio Brown finish this year among receivers? Inside the top 5, top 12, or outside the top 12?
I'm probably going to go against the grain here. I still think he finishes in the top 12. You look at AB on a year-to-year basis, he averages 536 yards after the catch, which is tremendous. So you're going to get a boatload of points there as long as Carr could just find a way to get him the ball. And if you look back in the past, going back from 1998 when John Gruden had Tim Brown as his best receiver, going back to his Tampa Bay days when Keyshawn Johnson was his best receiver and Joey Galloway, his number one receiver on his team averaged a total of 133 targets between those 11 seasons. So if AB gets anywhere near that, I still think he'll be able to produce enough to provide that wide receiver 1 numbers. Plus, there's a few wide receivers in that range right now that, like Diggs and Thielen, that I feel like possibly could probably drop out the top 12 as well.
All right, good stuff. We're going to the Chargers next. Ryan, who leads this team in touchdown receptions this year? Of course, you got Mike Williams, you got Hunter Henry there, you got Keenan Allen, even Melvin Gordon if he comes back. Who's the touchdown leader in receptions this year for the Chargers?
I have Mike Williams slotted as the touchdown leader there. I think he's an absolute stud in the red zone. He's huge. He knows how to box out. He basically turns into a power forward down there. And they can move him around. And the impressive part is last year, out of his 11 touchdowns, he had 7 in the red zone and off of only 14 attempts in the red zone, which is significantly less than most of the top guys in the league by almost half. So if they get that, if he gets more volume in there, that number is only going to go up.
All right, good stuff. And what we got?
And by the way,
go ahead.
Skip poor Miami Dolphins.
Oh yeah, we skipped them on purpose.
I mean, we should.
I think that's fine.
The answers are simple, but we can't disrespect their team.
Well, since Ryan was the Dolphins, we'll stay with you with the Dolphins. Outside of Kenyon Drake and Ryan Fitzpatrick, is there a relevant fantasy player in this offense for this year?
No, and neither is Ryan Fitzpatrick. Next question.
Fair enough. All right, that's a quick one.
Sorry, Dolphins.
About 2 weeks.
All right, what you got for the Broncos, Ryan?
For the Broncos, I got, will the backfield be a 50-50 split? And if not, who's the leader?
All right, so I think it's going to be probably closer to 60-40, but not the way it's being drafted. I think it's 60-40 in the Royce Freeman direction. I think that they limit Lindsey a little bit. They want him to play that Tariq Cohen role. That they play with the Bears with Vic Fangio was there. I know he's the defensive coordinator, but I think he wants to bring that offense over. I think he fits that role a little bit better than Royce Freeman does. I think Freeman becomes the first down, second down back, and I think he gets that role. So I think it's 60-40 in favor of Royce Freeman, and I've been drafting Freeman in pretty much every draft. I think I have him in probably 7 or 8 of my 12 leagues right now. So I love Rushford this year, especially where he's being drafted. All right, guys, that wraps up all 32 teams. Now we're going to hit our forgotten player of the week.
Get ready for GoingFor2.com's Forgotten Fantasy Player of the Week.
All right, Courtney, we'll go to you first since you haven't been on the show in forever, and we haven't done this segment when you were on the show before. Who is your forgotten fantasy player tonight?
I had to dig into the archives for this one, and it's not a Philadelphia Eagle because I knew that would have been too simple. That would have been too easy. So I'm going with Quadri Missiles Ishmael.
Nice.
Yeah, so I had him on one of my 2002 Yahoo teams, and his year that he had 7 touchdowns, 1,059 yards. So, and as for his career, 353 catches, over 5,000 yards, 33 touchdowns in 10 seasons. So, yeah, I went with Quadri Missile Ishmael.
Yeah, I remember him. I had him on my teams as well back then. That's a good pull right there because everyone did forget about him. I know I did. Good stuff. All right, Justin, who's your forgotten fantasy player of the week?
All right, Ryan, I actually think you're going to appreciate this one, being that you're a college football head. My forgotten player is former All-American Big East running back of West Virginia, comboed with Pat White to form one of the deadliest quarterback-running back duos in college football history, Steve Slayton.
Steve Slayton.
2008, when he was in Houston, he led me to my very first fantasy football championship, and I only drafted him because I was a fan of him in college. There was no buzz around him starting. I finished as the RB6 that year, ahead of guys like LT, Maurice Jones-Drew, Clinton Portis, and Brian Westbrook. He had 268 carries, 1,282 yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, 50 catches, which in the mid-2000s, that was pretty good. 377 yards and 1 touchdown, but the man led me to my first fantasy football championship. Had to give him some love.
Nice. I love that.
I actually went and saw him play Pitt his junior year or one of the seasons of college. I looked it up while you're doing that. In that game, he had 23 carries, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Wow.
Plus 130 receiving yards. It was the most ridiculous performance I've ever seen in college.
Wow.
Ever seen in person at
It's not
any
even
level.
the Big East anymore, too.
Huh?
The Big East.
Yeah, and he lit them up, man. And so did Pat White. Like, it was ridiculous. So I'll always have a soft spot for him.
Nice. That's a great pull because actually, I've heard of him. I just didn't know he had that good of a season. But the season you just mentioned, that's a pretty good season. You said RB6 is what he ended up that year?
RB6, yeah. He ended up going to the Canadian League like 3 years later. He was completely irrelevant.
He had that 1 good year.
That's the second CFL player in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we had one last week, too. You're right. We had a CFL player last week as well. All right, guys, let's go around the room here and get your Twitter handles, where we can follow you at, your show. Courtney, make sure you plug that. Justin, we'll go to you first there. Give us your Twitter handle, where we can follow you at and what you're working on.
Sure, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Polizzi21_. That's POLIZZI21_. And you can follow my fantasy football page, the Full Football Fanlist, at FootballFull. That's football, FAUX.
All right, good stuff. And Courtney, where can we follow you at? Your crazy ass numbered handle you got for Twitter.
I know. I got to get that changed. I mean, I had that for many years. So, but you can follow me on Twitter at Courtney110979. That's the birthday. About to be 40 this year, so look out for that. But you can follow the show at Get the Real Deal on Twitter. Again, it's going to be airing on Sunday, relaunch on Spreaker.com. So definitely check that out.
All right, good stuff. And Ryan, where can we find you at?
Find me on Twitter at Ryan Searfoss at Fantasy FB Connect. You can find me here every Tuesday and next Friday.
Next Friday? Nope, it's just Tuesday from now on.
Just Tuesday from now on?
Yep.
Awesome. And I'll be doing weekly waiver wire articles for us, and I'm going to break it down by depth of league this year and make it a little bit cater to you guys.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, I was just going to mention that on the closing here is that this is our last Friday show for the season long. So we'll have a Tuesday show next week for season long with Ryan, and then the Friday show will be the DFS show, and we'll bring back Ryan and Gerson, and we're going to break down the DFS slate for week 1. So with that said, I'm Jeff. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Check us out at GoingFor2.com. Peace.